FiiO is releasing headphone after headphone. I was still looking at the FT3 and their newest planar magnetic, the FT5, and they quietly released this one here, the JT1, which is a budget close bag from JadeAudio, which is the label under which they sell most of their cheaper stuff. So that was an instant buy for me. I'm really curious here, so let's just get right into it. The build quality is pretty good for not even costing like 100 euro. It's very light, but you still have quite a bit of metal here with the hinges and the suspension strap, had the metal cover here. But even the plastic parts do not feel cheap and are pretty sturdy in my eyes. So that's a solid construction that can easily be used for recording when you're on the move. The cable is also nicely braided and thick, but well, let's call it flexible. You can see it still holds the position a little bit, but does not really tangle up and it's not microphonic. Build quality is kind of FiiO's thing, and basically all of their stuff is built really well, but it's still nice to see their cheaper stuff is taken care of too in that regard. I do also like the design. It's nothing fancy, but it's also not too plain. Just a basically really straight over ear headphone with a kind of a little artistic flowery design. I don't know what they wanted to picture here, but it looks cool. And you have the labels here and the little born for music. Besides the really good build quality, the JT1 is extremely comfortable. Again, it's really light and the suspension strap here works quite well with the self adjustment. I have no hotspots on my head and the ear pads are also really soft. Obviously it's not real leather or anything, but the fake leather they used feels extremely nice. Be it the ear pads or the headband, it's really soft and feels exceptionally good on your head and skin. So it's really easy. You just put this on your head and it fits. It does feel a bit loose in the beginning, but that subsides pretty fast and it's not noticeable after a minute or so. I guess that's also because the clamping force is not really high. Again, does not matter for me. It sits and it fits really well. Yeah, I don't even know what to say here anymore. Comfort, at least for my head shape, is like A+. So sound wise, these are marketed as getting good hi-fi sound for not a lot of money. And while I really like the JT1, you should know some things about its sound signature. As always, we are starting with the bass here. And there's a lot of bass in the JT1. There's a huge boost from 50 to 150 Hz, which basically encompasses the whole mid bass range, but there's still a bit of the really low bass. Like everything below 60 I would consider as lower bass, and there's still quite a bit of an emphasis here. Oh man, the mid bass punches you so hard on this headphone. After that, there is a cut in the region from the upper bass to the lower mid range to make that huge bass boost not impact and muddy up the mid range as much. So, to what does that translate while listening to music? Electronic music has a lot of punch and bass boom to it, and it's just a joy to listen to. There's a lot of body to the sound, and because of the cut in the upper bass, it's still quite nice to listen to genres such as rock and metal that would otherwise be awful to listen to because of the hit in the clarity. Rap music sounds great too because there's still some attack in the vocal region that does not get overshadowed by the bass. So basically everything sounds really fat with the JT1, but without getting excessively muddy. The cut they did in the frequency works quite well even for this amount of bass. But as you may have guessed, that also means that bass is more or less strongly present. Fans of tight and absolutely controlled bass will be annoyed here. That does not mean that the bass is a wobbly mess, it is actually quite clear sounding for the present amount and does not sound mushed together most of the time. It does feel somewhat slow and sometimes a bit overwhelmed with fast songs and drum beats, but that's just because of the pretty huge boost there. Going into the mid-range, the cut in the lower mid-range is noticeable with some instruments and male voices because these do take a hit in fullness and warmth. Also, guitars seem to be somewhat thin and kind of scratchy from time to time. You have this bass, but then instruments are not as full and real sounding as they could be. And because there is quite a bit of an emphasis in the upper mid-range, instruments and vocals can also get somewhat shouty and harsh. Don't get me wrong, that's not a deal breaker here. I still really enjoyed listening to my stuff here and it's great for the price. Just a few nitpicky things that you could say about the JT1. Also, it really does depend on the mix or the album or song, but I noticed that here and there. The midrange as a whole looks a bit weird when looking at the frequency response graph, but it actually does not sound as bad or strange when I am subjectively listening to music. But the added clarity FiiO seems to have looked out for, additionally to the bass emphasis, seems to come at a little cost here. This goes on when looking at the treble, because even with the bass emphasis, it should be clear that the JT1 is not a laid-back headphone. The treble, just as the upper mid-range, is more on the brighter side and does tend to sound sharp with a little metallic edginess to it from time to time. It's not piercing, though I did not notice annoyingly sibilant vocals or something like that. What's good is that the treble is also not peaky, because while it is somewhat bright sometimes, it's not like, man, this sounds laid back, and then something hits you out of nowhere. Most of the time, both the upper mid-range and treble does not get too fatiguing. Again, it's still not a relaxed sounding headphone, and all in all, it really sounds pretty good with most genres here. Looking at the sound as a whole, this headphone does work best with electronic music or rap, so genres where a well-balanced mid-range is a little bit less important than having strong bass and then some clarity in the upper registers. In contrast to electric guitars, most synthesizer melodies do not exhibit this harshness fast, but rather cut through the bass nicely. So the upped clarity works well here, but it can be too much when I'm listening to Tool, for example, which have like a really present guitar there that cuts through the mix. It does work really well with old school rock and new metal. In both genres, it makes it more groovy and gives the guitars some bite. Technicalities seem pretty good, especially imaging in games works quite well, and I think this can be used as a comfortable gaming headphone easily. Also, the bass and clarity works nice with single player stuff, and it's just the immersive quality of sound that is definitely there. Because of the cut in the upper bass region, the detail retrieval also does not suffer as much as you might expect with a bass boosted headphone, and the added clarity helps with separation of instruments too. So it does these things quite well for around like €80, I guess it is. So in conclusion, I think for the price, FiiO nailed it here and made a great headphone for everyday use. It's got great bass, nice clarity, and it's good for a lot of music and games. It's certainly not for listeners who want a neutral sound, but otherwise, in my eyes, it's a great headphone. So that's it with this review. I hope you liked it. And yeah, hope you have a great day and see you next time. Goodbye.